So, good afternoon, Alberto, and thank you for joining me today.
Good afternoon, Catherine, and thank you for inviting me today.
Yeah, it's a real pleasure. And for episode 4 of International Expansion Explained, I'm really happy that the two of us are going to talk about the key elements of a successful China strategy. Now, for those people who don't know Alberto already, Alberto Antinucci, he's really a China business specialist. He's a serial entrepreneur, digital strategist, a business coach, a global public speaker, and a mentor, as well as being a really nice guy. Now, he moved to Taiwan when he was 19 to start international trade and project development and established international distribution channels between Asia and the rest of the world. Following that, he lived and worked in Taipei, Hong Kong, Shenzhen, Shanghai, the USA, and all across Europe for 30 years, consolidating his experience across all kinds of fields like research and development, production, marketing, and sales, until he became a specialist in business coaching and startup mentoring. And since the mid 90s, he's developed internet and e commerce projects, registering several patents. And these days, he's focusing on business activity in China, making his knowledge of Chinese business and cultural dynamics available to Western brands, supporting the market penetration in the territory, and has also, of course, several important partnerships that he's built up over the years. He also has a real passion for digital innovation. So, all things NFT, blockchain, AI, and the metaverse. And he talks about these topics also at public events. That is just a really impressive resume.
Well, thank you, Catherine, for the presentation. Yeah, that's not impressive if you think about it. I've been on the business for 35 years now, even more than that. 34 years as an entrepreneur, and and before that, I used to work for quite important companies in the field. So that I have learned and I have made my way through the business and the problems that you can encounter working with as a young kids in an international environment. Okay, so I went really full dive and I faced the problem firsthand and I tried to solve them all the time. And what I loved about everything is was that the opportunity to be in China in the late 80s and living the 90s in China and Taiwan and seeing how China was built in terms of manufacturing infrastructures and being able to share the not only the assets but also the formations of these infrastructures, okay, gave me the opportunity to see things ahead of others for many years. And traveling up and down from Europe, from the west to China and the Chinese and the greater China's area, it gave me also an opportunity also to compare and to see what was the differences and how things could work on one side of the world and didn't work at all on the other side, and vice versa. And while before I did this for many years just for my own enterprises and my clients, I then realized that it was not a matter of doing the business, but it was a matter of understanding the business. So what's behind the scene of the business procedures? And this was a big revelation for me when I failed dramatically with my own factory in China. I don't talk often about this, but I think I wanted to share this bit of experience because it was a period of my life where I was successful in many different businesses, and I came up to a point where I was sick and tired of giving my manufacturing business to subcontractors and teaching them how to improve their job, so that I wanted to start my own factory at that time. And we're talking about 12 years ago. And so in 2010, when I started planning it, I thought that I could do it. I already had 20 years experience in China. I knew how to speak the language. I knew how to manage things. I knew all the procedures. I had the money and the investment, and I did it. And it ended up that after 4 years, 5 years, I wasn't making money. And it was just a big mistake for me to trying to do what I wanted in that way, just because I wasn't a Chinese. So I learned the hard way that there was something that I could have told anybody not to do it or how to avoid those mistakes, but I wasn't able to tell me on first hand because I was so strong of my position. And then when I ended that experience, I said, okay, this is the right time when I start to give back. So from that failures, from that situation where I had to shut down the factory and lose a lot of money, I understood that I could have helped a lot of enterprises, Western enterprises that wanted to do business in China, to run production in China or to sell their product or services in China, or even simply sourcing from China, specific products, that it was not a thing about the product themselves, but it was a problem about the mentality and the mindset of running the business. And this
Mhm.
is how I started to talk about on public stages around the world, and my concept was very easy. China business strategy. Let's do this, okay? Let's understand why it works and why it will not work. And I was able to gain in a lot of followers for this with these topics, and I
Yeah.
was also able to earn in a lot of customers, big companies who really found my mentoring essential for their development. Without it, they would have failed drastically. Instead, we just design a different strategy to do things. And strategy is part of even the execution, because sometimes there are people that goes like, between a strategy and the execution, what is the best things to do? And I say, well, the execution is part of a
Yes.
strategy. There is no execution if you don't plan your strategy first. Okay, so this is all that I'm trying to implement with my clients, and I'm trying to transfer with my experience.
Well, that really is absolutely fascinating. First of all, though, I would just like to take a step back and to ask, what was it about China or the Greater China region that attracted you in the first place? Because certainly at the beginning of the 90s, a lot of European companies, they were looking very much to Eastern Europe, they were looking a lot to Russia, as being the new kind of um, frontier of where they were going to do business, and that this was where they were expecting their huge growth to come from. So, what was it about the Asian culture that attracted you at that time, at a very young age?
Very, very young age. Well, first of all, let's try to picture it in a timeline. It was mid of the 80s that I was working for a company, part of the Electrolux group, and it was a time where technology was developing very fast, but there were no basic standards. So there was no Windows available yet. The few versions of operating systems were just some kind of adaptation of a big AS400 machine, so Unix-based things. It's a little bit, and I was a little nerd. I was a very young nerd that had an idea and was able to develop the idea in terms of software and the hardware design. But the idea that I was developing for this company wasn't possible to complete because I didn't have enough computing powers. And so they asked me to find new computers, new motherboards at that time, and we're talking about 1986. Okay, that could fit my business skills and my business idea in terms of products. And then I said, but there are nobody who has these products available in Europe. And I even tried to contact people from America, and they don't have it. But every product we receive, it has a small label on the back that says "Made in Taiwan." So I said, maybe I need to go to Taiwan. And that was it. So it was, I remember it, January 8th, 1988, that I landed in Taipei. And I was overwhelmed by a very, very cheerful, um, welcoming at the airport. Actually, they were not for me. They were not there for me only. They were for anybody who had a foreign face and was entering the country. And they were just showing me papers in front of my face and telling me strange things that I couldn't understand until I realized that those paper was not there to bother me, but they were kind of depliants, they were brochures, they were printed papers with product descriptions and prices on it. And I said, wait a second. Okay. I thought I had to come here, look for a situation and a solution to source for products like reading the yellow pages. I don't know if you remember the yellow pages that we
Yeah.
had many years ago. And I was foolish enough to think that I could find the English written yellow pages in Taiwan. But instead, I had these people showing me cards, add-ons, computer parts, but also bicycle parts and motor engines and stuff like that. And I go like, okay, yes, I'm interested about you, and you. No, I'm not in your business. So I basically selected my suppliers at the airport. And I said, in that precise instant, I say to myself, this is where I want to live because I could find answers to my question. So everything was in a moment where there was no internet. There were fax, but faxes were very slow and very poor quality in detail. So it was difficult to get informations to contact with these companies. You could have sent them a mail post, okay, and wait on the back for a few months to get a reply, if any, and stuff like this. There were some international trade fair, but it was difficult to know where they were and when they were. It was difficult to book hotels. It was difficult to fly. It was difficult to organize everything. Even more difficult to get a visa for those places. But I said I need to be here, and that was it. So I gave my resignation, 6 months in UK, and to just organize my new passport because it was expiring for military purposes, and and then I moved to Taiwan, and but then I had a problem. Taiwan would not allow me to live there. Taiwan would allow me to visit Taiwan as a tourist, so on a tourist visa for 30 days only. And Taiwan is an island. So every 4 weeks, I had to
Yep.
fly out of Taiwan and go somewhere. So there were two places closest to Taipei. One was the Philippines, and
Hmm.
the other one was Hong Kong. So at first, I found Hong Kong boring and the Philippines more entertaining. And so I was getting out on a Thursday evening, Friday morning, giving my passport to renew the visa, and then spending the weekend on the beach in the Philippines, and going back on the Monday to Hong Kong, to Taipei. But then I realized that I was spending all the money that I was making for vacations every month, which was cool, but it wasn't really profitable. And so I say to myself, okay, but what's going on in Hong Kong? Because the Hong Kong business area at that time, I remember I was doing electronics and technology, was more into toys, into plastic watches, into
Yep.
cheap stuff. And in the meantime, many things changed. Tiananmen in 1989, there was, the Berlin Walls, which went down. Okay, so it was an opening for the eastern bloc of Europe, and it was a kind of changes. And in the meantime, the Shenzhen Free Trade Zone started to give out a lot of lands for foreign investment. So all the Taiwanese who needed to expand their factory and had difficulties to find workers for their factories, they started to open up in Shenzhen. So Shenzhen was a rural land. There was nothing in Shenzhen at that time. It was just a fisherman village in Shekou, and there was this big hotel in Lohu, which is across the border cross of Hong Kong. Okay, there was a plaza there, and it was an incredible situation to go there and go with the Taiwanese to open up the factories. So to choose the lot of land and say, okay, we're going to put here the manufacturing plant, we're going to put here the dormitories, and we're going to build up here the generator so that we can give lights and electricity to the factory itself. So it was,
Yeah.
there were no roads, no lines, and no telephones. Absolutely, there was nothing there, and that's how I started to get involved with the production and the assessment and everything, because I wanted people to do good products. Okay, and that's how I started to spend more time in China than in Taiwan,
In
where I had my headquarters.
Okay. So you really started to, let's say, live this more or less Chinese economic wonder that we've seen for the last 30 years, right from the very beginning, from the bottom up to build.
I
Amazing.
did. It was very interesting until I decided to move everything to Shenzhen. So I took my family down to Shenzhen from Taipei, and it was a difficult choice because Taipei at that time it was very much um, advanced in terms of connections, in terms of lifestyles, in terms of all of the advantages that you have when you work in a big metropolis. Okay, Shenzhen there was nothing, but everything was under construction. So there was this strong noise every day and night of building things. Ta, 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 ta. It was always like that. It was so strong and so difficult to live with that. But I had to decide it. I mean, I thought that for a greater good, it was a good choice, a good opportunity anyway.
And did your wife agree that it was a good opportunity, or she agreed for a time?
Well,
You don't have
I
to answer that if you
divorced.
don't want to.
No, 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 no. It's okay. I divorced in 1999 because my choices of how to run and where to run the business were not going along with the choices or what kind of life she would have had to do. And that was my Taiwanese wife. Okay. A few years later, as I met my actual wife, Margarita, and with her, she was so enthusiastic to follow me anywhere. She lived in the most improbable places just because it was a discovery. It was everything new and everything could be done. So the ambitions to be in a place where everything had to be built and the willingness to invest in your time in such an environment that had to be built. Someone had to do it, okay? So why not us, okay? That was the moving and the push for all of our intentions, okay, for the business. It was great. It was simply great.
Yeah, I can imagine that that must have been such an exciting time to have really been in China. I mean, the last 10 years have been an exciting time to be in China, but different. So it's,
It's always been exciting,
yeah,
trust me, because China is so big. And what was new
yeah,
in Shenzhen at the time, it's new now in some other places. It's great. I mean, China is a really incredible place to develop your ideas. And there are a lot of inputs that you can receive, a lot of learning that you need to go through, but then at the end it's something that's really worth it. Okay, their mentality, the Chinese mentality, is different from ours, and until you don't
hmm,
understand it, and until you
yeah,
don't accept that they're there, because the problem for us, for let's say about me, okay, the problem that I suffer most was that I thought that I knew better. And this is exactly the same problem that every Western entrepreneur who has had success in the West thinks about China. They think that they know it better, in particular about their business. And this
yeah,
is exactly the biggest mistake anybody could do. We don't know it better. It's a different place. It's a different environment. It's a different infrastructure. It's a different mindset. How can you know it better? They will never follow you unless you follow them first and you lead the way, you show them the way. Okay, but to reach that point, you need to understand a little bit more about the Chinese and the way they think about the business and the business development.
Yeah, I think that for sure a lot of companies underestimate the kind of foundational knowledge and the foundational, let's say, openness that they need to bring before they start considering the Chinese market. Because a lot of them come in thinking that it's going to be a way of earning fast money, and that isn't true.
Yeah,
So, yeah.
absolutely. Think about it. Every time I was coming back to Europe, and people that I knew, they meet me and they go like, "Oh, Alberto, fantastic! You came back from China. Okay, in China, there must be a product with which we can make money." And I go like, yeah, okay. Tell me what's the product you want to make money with, and then we can see whether we can build up a business with that. No, 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 no. You any products that we make money because it's gonna make us rich. I said, okay, man, this is not what we should do. Okay, and this is not how it works. Okay, it's not that finding a product make you rich. It's a little bit more complicated with that.
It certainly is. It certainly is. I mean, these days, what would be the, let's say, the foundations that you recommend the companies need to have in place before they start to work on their China strategy? What prerequisites do they need to bring?
Well, first of all, um, any company who wants to go to China, they need to understand that China is not is not an easy market, and is not for the it's a long trip, it's a long run, it's a long-term investment. Okay, and when I say long-term, I also mean a very high budget. So the company itself need to have enough budget to allocate for the Chinese market. There is no shortcuts and there is no sure way. You need to get your hands dirty in the market. You need to understand where you are compared to the local market. So you need to do your homework. You need to really work hard to understand what the real market situation is. And once you have this understanding, then you need to ask yourself, okay, are my products ready to enter the Chinese market?
Yeah.
80% of the time, the products a Western company has could be could be a good product for the Chinese market, but it's not the right one. So it need to be adjusted. Either
Yeah.
you have to do a better market research, or you need to find a very specific niche of a market, or you need to change the products to local and customize the products for the local needs. And I'm not talking about anything in particular. I'm talking about everything. So from
Yeah.
machinery to fashion, from luxury products, okay, to food and beverages. Everything need to be done in a way that the Chinese will appreciate the product itself, because if they don't have it before, they don't know about it. And if a company wasn't there before, they don't know about the company. So there is a lot of investment to be done in communication, in processing, in understanding, in registration, in intellectual property protections. Okay, in this kind of things, everything's need to be settled. And the most important, I would recommend any of this company, okay, to have a team of people which need to be trained to think differently just for China.
Yeah.
So not any people, but people who have the ambition and the willingness to go and fight against the prejudice and fight against preconcepts about business, about money, about time, about ethics that are completely different in perceptions and understanding with the Chinese people. And this is a very hot topic, Catherine, trust me.
Yep. Yeah. No, I mean, I've seen something similar, that you go into, when you enter into China. I mean, the first products that I entered into China with were infant formula products, and so they had to be completely reformulated for the market from a regulatory perspective, but also, of course, from a marketing perspective. And it took us, I think, about 18 months in order to do that and to bring it onto the market. So it was certainly a long time before the products came on stream. And of course, during that time, you have to deal with all of those discussions internally about why is China so difficult, and why, because when things are different, they're often seen as being intentionally difficult, rather than it's just something that's different and something that you need to accept as a cultural announce. So, yeah,
Absolutely. Infant formula, it was a hot topic for many years because
yeah,
there were a lot of scandals in China for bad products reputation, and so buying an infant formula from Europe would have been a solution that kill them all. But
yeah,
on the other hand, it wasn't an immediate solution. I mean, it was not important to just have the infant formula. You needed to understand how to propose it and how to
yes,
overcome the skepticism of the locals, and how to talk to them and how to let them choose your products rather than others. And
yeah,
this is the very big issues when you start a business. Okay, not
yeah,
talking about then all the problems that we have with different internet solutions, applications, and stuff. Okay, which is a very technical things, but with a lot of mindset ruling behind the curtains as well.
yeah. And I mean, from my side, these days, I'm often talking with companies that they need to have, firstly, that they need to have a strategy. And I realized when I first started consulting, that there were statistics out there from the US Department of Trade that 75% of small companies don't have any kind of formal strategy. I'm not sure whether it's as bad in Europe, but for
Most
export, I think
probably.
it often is. Yeah, probably. But also, that when you say to companies that they need to have a strategy for China, not just an international strategy and not just an Asian strategy, do you find that it's difficult to convince companies of that, or do they, when they come to you, do they already know that they need to have a China strategy, and they've chosen you to be the one to, let's say, to help them to develop their China strategy, or do you have to persuade them that they actually need the China strategy?
Well, Catherine, I am too old now to waste time with people that don't understand this at the beginning. I tell them. I mean, I tell them very. You see, I am very rude sometimes with the potential customers. They contact me and they tell me, "Oh, I need a WeChat account and I want to have an e-commerce with a mini program." And I said, okay, and who are you? Oh, we are number two leaders in Europe for this kind of products. And we're going to be the number one very soon. And since we're so good, now we have the resources to do that in China as well. And I said, okay, and how long have you been in China? No, no, we're going to start now. And that's why we need you to give us a WeChat account and a mini program to do and sell directly to consumer. And I said, okay, so you're telling me that you've never been in China, but the Chinese market does not know you, and that because you are famous in Europe, then you're going to have a success in China. And I said, and they go like, yes. And I said, well,
Mm,
I'm not interested. I tell them, I'm not interested to work with you. I mean, I already know that I'm going to waste my time telling you anything about what you should do because you don't have a right attitude to the business. And I prefer you to remember me as the one who turned you down rather than the one that let you waste time and money promising you something that I couldn't keep. I got one
Yeah.
taste like the Chinese, and I cherish it. I sorry about it. So I don't really take
Yeah.
care of his customers no more. Not anymore.
Okay. So what, when you have your selected customers, what are the key elements of a successful China business strategy that you look at with them? What is the kind of points that you're considering?
Okay, the framework is pretty long, but it consists basically in doing what I call the homework. The market research is very important. That means that we need to do an advanced market research on what the product is in the market, and I'm talking about not the customer's products, but similar products done and distributed by the Chinese in China. This is the only way to understand where we could position ourselves within the market. Meanwhile, I do a training program within the company. So I choose the key element in the company and I try to build what I call the China business team. And so this is where my lessons go. There are about 30 plus hours of training programs that goes with these people, just to let them understand and see all the specific limitations that the market could give them as a trouble. So it is a 6 months procedures where we do the
Mm-hmm.
first 3 months divided between training and market research, and then the second 3 months they go through an understanding of where we could put and what are the resources within the company that we could implement, change, or develop for the Chinese market. This is such it sounds like a long time, but it actually is very short, at 6 months, just to understand what can be done and how we can do it. Okay. After that, in the meantime, we do all the processing to register the intellectual properties, eventual patents, and eventually some Chinese assets like the Chinese name of a business, of a Chinese name of a product, the brand in Chinese, and all the accounts, the social accounts that we will use to
Yeah.
promote the products in the market. And we haven't started doing anything yet. So we have, allocated a lot of resources and time just to protect our assets and understand what we could potentially do if we do it right.
Yeah. No, I think that this time that you invest, any time that you invest upfront of a project, especially like China, is time that you win back later, because you invest a lot of time into learning about the market and to really understanding what it is that you need to have. And also, I think companies need to, if they're not prepared to invest the time up front, so don't realize that, um, they also don't realize that China isn't a market that you can just do a little bit of on the side. You have to really focus on the Chinese market. It's not something that you can do just like a whole country where you just add it to somebody's work just as an additional task,
Absolutely.
for
Um,
sure.
there is one thing which happened quite often. Companies that do have an interest in products for the Chinese market, and they have been already contacted by some Chinese distributors. So they come to us and they come to me and they go like, Alberto, we have been doing business in China for the last 3 years. We have been contacted by a distributors. He promised us to do big business. He gave us a very interesting order in the beginning. We sent out the goods, but it was not all the goods he ordered, because he asked us to deliver as much as we could as soon as possible. So it was an initial sample orders. And after that, he kind of didn't reply to us anymore. What happened? And we really need to understand what we could do. Now, This is very typical. This
Mm.
is so typical within, the Chinese business people and the European manufacturers. But it happens 50% of the companies who do have a good products for the Chinese market. What happened here is very simple, is that they didn't understand what the real scope of business for the Chinese importer was. It was not to
Yeah.
distribute their products, but it was to see the potential behind that kind of products for its own manufacturing or its own customization of a product itself. Okay, so the whole perspective was distorted, and the whole scope of business was different. And the only problem is that the Western didn't understand it, and they believed they could develop a business, and they wanted to go back and take it again. In that situation, we have a very different position now, because we have a product which has already been introduced in the market, given authority to certain entities in China to take care of the naming and the distribution, and given responsibility to others to take care of our face, of our visibility, of a
Hmm.
perception of the consumers about the products we have. What happened is that since we have given it away, it's no more ours. I mean, we can't get it back. And if we
Mm.
want to get it back, we should start a lawsuit that will go on for years, wasting time and money and resources and faith. So people ask me, so what should we do? And I said again, okay, let's analyze, let's go back in time. What were you before the company, the distributors contact you? I mean, what was your position in the market at that time? And they go like, well, we didn't know the market and the market didn't know us. Okay, good. Let's start from there. And if we can't
Yeah.
do that with your famous brand in the West, let's do it with the famous Chinese brand, but we're going to build it with your product and product knowledge. So, in this way, we are going to expand a completely new business opportunity, which is not there yet. And it will cost you as much as to try to recover the lost one, but with the guarantee that you will not lose it because
Yeah.
it will be yours. So these kind of mindset strategies are so important to be understood, and they are so difficult to to be acknowledged by the Westerners, because we always think that we know it better. Okay. Instead, in China, what I learned in these many years is that whatever I think I knew it better, it was wrong. And so I always put myself out.
Yeah. Sometimes I've seen a lot of companies who insist that from their perspective, no, in our industry it has to be done like this, or our company insists it has to be done like this, and that is usually shortly before they have some kind of disaster on the market, simply because they're just not realizing, they're often just not realizing that their business partner is telling them in a very polite, maybe slightly roundabout way, that will not work here. But they don't understand that that is what they're being told, and insist that they go ahead with their preconception.
Preconception is a bad thing. It's very bad things. We need to be open. Chinese market
Yeah.
is there. The opportunity is there. The market is, and also other things. When people talk about China, for instance, people complain to me, like people in the fields complain to me and say, how can you be a China business specialist or an expert about China? China is so big. And I say, well, it's true. China is really big and so different, place to place, region to region, city to city, tires to tires. But at the same time, okay, what I am specialist about is how to let you understand what's a mindset behind their attitude and behind their strategy to do the business. So I am good to you and I can benefit you from my wrongdoing in the past, from my mistake, from my arrogance, from my being a Westerner who knew it better. And I know that it was not the case at that time. I was simply lucky when things went well. Things went well because I was before anybody else, because I was doing something completely new, and because there was no other possibility to go wrong, but not because I knew exactly what I was doing. Now that I
Yeah.
am doing this as a consultant and I'm working with big enterprises, and I can see clearly situation A, situation B, then I start to put on a plan A, B, C, D, and exit strategies together, because that's how you should work. And and
Yeah.
and and uh, and it's important to let them understand that life is not what it looks like. And the Chinese in business, they may have different attitude towards us compared to what we have towards them.
Yeah. No, I think that this kind of arrogance and assuming that they know best is probably one of the mistakes that costs European companies at least the most business in China, because they seem to assume that they know best for their brand, even when they have absolutely no idea about the market itself, but only about their products.
Correct. Correct. Doing business with China is not a matter of selling products. Doing business with China is understanding China and adapt it to the market. And if
Yeah.
you adapt to the market, then the market will ask for your products. You don't have to push. You have to be able to give, but not to push things in.
Yeah. I I've often felt that also when you push too much into the market, then the Chinese the Chinese consumer becomes very skeptical because they feel
Absolutely.
like, why is there so much product available? There must be something wrong with this. They've got overstocking, or and if you have a kind of scarcity, this creates some kind of exclusivity, and that this can be really, let's say, it can be beneficial for sales as long as it's not too extreme, that you're kind of out of stock all the time.
Yeah, absolutely.
And maybe because I'm just looking a little bit at the time, but how would you say that the Chinese business mindset has evolved over the past 5 years? Do you feel that especially the last 2 years of pandemic, do you feel that that has brought about changes in the way that Chinese companies are
Oh,
looking to do business?
okay. Well, um,
It's
let's say
probably
that
another question for
no,
another
no,
few
no, no,
hours,
no.
but
It's a
yeah.
beautiful question. I never had this question before, but it's a beautiful question. Let's say one thing, okay? These last 2 years in China, things have changed drastically. China had to shut down most of the international trade opportunities, and to reinvent themselves to feed the local market. Okay, so it was a challenge to survive. Now there have been many situations where the Chinese had to change completely um, business completely the business that they were doing, because it was not affordable no more. They couldn't find the
Yeah.
logistic infrastructure to ship out the goods, so they couldn't do international trade. They had to do and sell the products to themselves. Okay, and this has drastically changed. But if you see, they focus and this is also very important for any company. Doesn't matter if they do B2B products or B2C products. Okay, but everything in China is customer centric. So once you define your customers, then look around them and do services for him and them. That's the best things that you could think. So what I've seen in the last 2 years, that from being a country where most of the revenue was coming from foreigners or from for the export, now they focus mainly into doing the business within their own region, and this has given them
Yeah.
the chances to change, and this change has been, well accepted. obviously has limited the growth, but you see, there are many fields that grow up very much. Today, China is having a very important and difficult situations in terms of COVID, in particular in big cities like Shanghai, where everything is settled down. And this is a
Yeah.
very, very difficult task to talk about because on one side, it's reframing what people used to think about the government, because before the government and whatever Xi Jinping was telling everybody was just like the Bible. It was a dogma. It was a
Yeah.
very important thing to follow. Okay. Today they go like maybe the policy, the zero COVID policy, did not work so well. So people are kind of rebelling a little bit. But the demonstrations again need to be proven by the fact that it would have been different if done otherwise, and that we will never know. So we will have very interesting times to come in these years, because there is a new election of a president coming in, and Xi Jinping is most probably going to be re-elected. Now, what I have seen in business is that if you don't take into consideration these things, so what happened internally in China, okay, you will not be able to understand how the Chinese think. Now, if the Chinese for the last 2 years have been kind of obeying the order to stay put, don't travel, don't go abroad. If you want to go abroad and come back in the country, you need to do 3 weeks plus one of confinements and so on. So it's something that really they didn't complain about it; they just did it. Why
Yeah.
are they able to do it without complaining so much? Because they've been educated like this. There is this leading position, this pyramid, where if something comes from above, then everybody else need to follow. And so the fact that they gonna complain about something is not really natural to them. Obviously, the condition today put them in a situation where you can't be put into a big room, a large space, where the, you know how do you say, a warehouse, just because you're positive to COVID, but you are not you
Sick.
don't have any symptoms, okay, and you get put all together. So people are complaining about the formalities. We're not complaining about the directions. So the
Yeah.
content is still there, but the formalities on the way they explicit the direction is not really good. So that's what they're complaining about. I would be keep watching the situation in China before I would invest in any new business. It's a good time for foreign companies to start studying about their positioning toward the market, because today new playgrounds and new situations are being created, and you really need to understand what's going on before you can plan any business development in the area.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I think that a lot of things are changing, and also these attitudes of where does my growth come from, or this confidence in Chinese production has grown very much. And I think that this is also it's an interesting trend that we're seeing in China, that suddenly China, oh no, suddenly, I mean that Chinese consumers have come to also appreciate that there are good Chinese products and good Chinese brands. And I know that some of my friends, they're looking and they're saying, okay, in the past they always looked for strong foreign brands to represent, whereas now they're considering maybe they need to look internally for their markets much more, like you mentioned.
But that's what I said before. If
Yep.
something doesn't work for a foreign company, why don't you start again from zero and make it local? Start from the clients. Look what the clients need and give them
Yep.
the answer they're looking for. So
Yeah.
that's where all the business will start, and it's a long process. It's not overnight process to come up with an idea or with a proposal. It's something that really need to be studied deeply and to compare and to analyze and to ask people and to know people and to talk to them and ask what they think. And you will come. Every time I ask a Chinese friends what they think about something, I always receive answer that I didn't expect.
Hmm. Yes.
And it's surprising. It's really surprising. A fascinating thing is that they always have an answer that you don't expect. And and that's a beautiful thing about China.
For sure. For sure. I think China will continue to fascinate us for many years to come. So it will be interesting to see what the next developments are. That's definite. But I think from a time perspective, we're coming a little bit to the end now, Alberto, and I would like to thank you for your time. But I have one last question, and that is a little bit knowing what you do now, what would be the advice that you would give to your younger self if you were starting out right now in China?
Listen, listen carefully. Listen what's in the air. Listen to what the people say and how they say it. Don't ignore simple messages that you think you know it better. That's what I will keep on telling me. And I tell my kids and the people I mentor, I'm teaching in university, it's a beautiful course that I design. It's called um, Business Strategies in China, and it's one exam into the business studies, and it's a walk basically. I take the students to walk through and experiment themselves at contradictions. So China is a contradiction to what we think we know. And so the only way to do things well, and the things that most important things I would tell my younger self is, Alberto, listen carefully to what they say. Probably what you understood is not what they meant. So listen.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think also that many companies have to, and many people, they have to also learn to listen, because listening is one thing, but you have to also hear.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
and in the beginning, you don't know how to take that what you're hearing, that it's on the surface, and to dig below the surface really to what's really going on.
yeah. So yeah, I would listen more and talk less. Yes, most probably.
Okay. Well, Alberto, thank you so much for taking the time to talk
It
to me
was a
today.
great time. Thank you, Catherine. It's lovely
Yeah,
to be of
for
any
me
help.
too. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.